What's going on, you guys? It's Chris Diaz here, and I wanted to make a quick introductory video before getting into the first official masterclass. As you can see behind me, I have the lighting, the camera, the mic, the entire setup. I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, and by 7 o'clock, I was in this chair, filming, shooting, editing, creating, and I finally came through. The first official masterclass is here for you guys. But before we get started, I need to be transparent about where I'm at. I'm in a season in my life where I'm rebuilding my identity, my relationship with God, my brand, my business, and most importantly, how I show up for my future. I'm not here to pretend like I have all the answers, know it all, or I'm some type of guru, because I'm not. I'm still in the process. But I can tell you with absolute confidence that I'm feeling more unshakable by the day. I'm learning to stop disappearing when things get tough, how to process issues more effectively, how to become a better leader, raise my standards, and keep the promises that I make for myself. Because a man's word matters. It's how you build credibility, your character, and respect for yourself and the people around you. So I hope that this masterclass serves you with a great purpose, because these are the exact tools that I'm using to change my life. And I'm not giving you theory, I'm giving you practical, implementatable, if that's even a word, tools that you can use to begin to make a change in yours. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's dive into it.
Brother, before we begin, put your phone down. Seriously, put it on Do Not Disturb, set it to the side, and give me your undivided attention for the entirety of this video. Because if you're listening to this while scrolling, answering messages, and checking notifications, you're going to repeat the same exact pattern this training was designed to help you break. I'm not asking you to spend the entire day with me here. I'm asking you that for the remainder of this video, be here, be present, be honest. And if you're on your phone, put it on Do Not Disturb, okay? And give this message that I'm going to be sharing with you a real opportunity to challenge you. I'm not here to give you another temporary burst of motivation. You and I both know you have already had plenty of them. You've watched something online, felt inspired, right? Promised yourself that you'd change and that tomorrow would be different, only to find yourself right back in the same place a few days later. That is not what we're going to be doing here today. Today, you're going to walk away with three things. How many things? Three. First and foremost, I'm going to show you how to recognize and break the self-sabotage pattern that keeps pulling you back into the same behavior. Second thing, I'm going to show you how to rebuild trust and credibility with yourself again. One kept promise and one conscious decision at a time. And third thing, I'm going to show you how to begin becoming a man whose word actually means something. Because at the end of the day, nothing is more valuable than your word. Can you trust yourself to do what you said you were going to do? Can the people around you trust what comes out of your mouth? And when life gets uncomfortable, does your word still mean something? Because a man who can't keep his word can make money, have status, and develop an appearance, but eventually he collapses. So for the entirety of this video, listen carefully. Don't make excuses. Do not think about who else needs to hear this. Because, buddy, you are here on purpose, and this message is exactly for you. Listen for where you recognize yourself. This is about you, nobody else. because today we're going to break the pattern, rebuild your self trust, and begin turning your word back into something valuable. Okay. This training right here is for you if deep down you know you are capable of more. Maybe you have fallen below your own standards. Maybe you keep telling yourself, I'm going to start again. I'll get serious tomorrow. I know what I need to do. But every time you make that promise, there's a part of you that no longer believes it because you have made the promise before and you have watched yourself break it time and time again. Maybe one bad meal becomes an entire weekend. One missed workout becomes another week without training. And one stressful day becomes another night of doom scrolling, overeating, drinking, smoking, watching porn, or whatever vice that you use to avoid sitting with yourself. Maybe your body has started slipping. Maybe your energy has dropped. Connection with God feels distant. Your confidence is not where it used to be. And while everyone else may still see you functioning, you know privately that you are living beneath your own potential and not where you know you can be. So this training is not for someone who needs to be convinced that change matters. It is for the person who already knows and is tired of watching themselves fall short. How many times have you promised yourself that this time would be different? Okay. So why should you listen to me? I want to keep this part brief because this training is not about me. But you deserve to know who you're listening to. I have operated in environments where standards, leadership, and results mattered. I broke sales records. I became a top performer and leader. I trained, recruited, and led hundreds of sales professionals. I built teams, systems, personal brands. I'm also a certified life coach, master of NLP, and I've spent years studying identity, language, human behavior, and performance. But here's the part that matters most for this conversation. I've also experienced what it feels like to fall below my own standards. I understand what it feels like to know how to perform and still find yourself in a season where you need to rebuild. So I'm not speaking to you as someone who only read a book about discipline. I know what it takes to come through. And I know what it feels like when you have, and I know what it feels like when you stop believing that you will. That is why I built this framework. See, you already know what to do. So listen up, brother. You already know what you should be doing. You know you should be training consistently. You know you should be eating better. You know you should stop numbing yourself. You know you should spend more time with God. You know you need to handle that difficult conversation, get the job done, make the call, follow up, and stop avoiding the responsibilities that keep following you. You know that you should keep the promises you make to yourself. So the problem is not a lack of information. You don't need another podcast video. You don't need another saved Instagram post. You don't need another perfect plan that you follow for 3 days and then abandon. You already know enough to improve your life. The problem is that something keeps interfering with your follow through. There is a pattern that is controlling what happens between the moment you make the promise and the moment you are supposed to act. And until you understand that pattern, you will keep blaming motivation, time, circumstances, and eventually yourself. So let me ask you a real question. If you already know what to do, why are you not doing it? And I don't want you to answer that question from a place of shame. Don't immediately just say, oh, it's because I'm lazy. It's because I've always been this way. I'm not disciplined or I always mess things up. Just be curious for a moment. Because what if that behavior is not random? What if there's a sequence of events happening in your head so quickly that you've never stopped long enough to see it? Think about it. Something happens, you attach a meaning to it. That meaning changes the conversation happening inside of your mind. That internal dialogue changes your emotional state. And that emotional state influences the next decision that you make. Then that next decision that you make becomes more evidence for the story you already keep telling yourself. So perhaps the problem is not that you are incapable of changing. Perhaps you've simply been repeating a pattern that you never learned how to interrupt. And you cannot change a pattern that you have not yet learned to see. I call this the self-sabotage feedback loop. As we go through it, I want you to notice where you recognize yourself. Because once you can see where you enter the loop, you can begin to learn how to exit. It starts with a promise. You promise yourself you're going to train, you're going to eat better, you're going to wake up earlier, you're going to stop returning to the same vice, you're going to make the phone calls, finish the work, and finally do what you've been avoiding. And in that moment, you may genuinely mean it, but then life happens. And guess what? It's always happening. The emotion changes, the motivation fades, and the moment of execution arrives, and you break the promise. Now, the broken promise is just one event, but what happens after that event is exactly what's keeping you stuck. See, you're not broken. You break the promise, and the internal dialogue begins. You find yourself saying things like, I always do this. I keep falling short. I cannot trust myself. I am never going to change. Now, notice what is happening. You are no longer simply describing what you did. You are beginning to make conclusions about who you are. And those conclusions produce an emotion like shame. How many of you guys have ever felt that shame come in? What about that sense of frustration? What about that feeling of discouragement? Sometimes hopelessness. And once you feel that way, what do you become more likely to do? That's right. You numb, you avoid, you procrastinate, you scroll, you overeat, you drink, you smoke, return to whatever gives you a temporary relief from having to face yourself. For some people, it's porn, attention, entertainment, binge scrolling. Then that behavior becomes more evidence for the old belief. You tell yourself, see, I knew I could not follow through. And now the loop becomes even stronger. And eventually, the pain gets high enough that you make another emotional promise right away. This Monday, or tomorrow, or next month, everything is going to change. But because the loop itself has not changed, you keep repeating the same pattern. Now, listen carefully. You are not broken. You have simply repeated and reinforced a loop. And a repeated pattern can feel like identity, but a pattern, my friend, can be broken. So there are two truths that begin opening the door. Truth number one, behavior is not identity. What you did matters and you should take responsibility for it, but one decision does not give the authority to permanently define who you are. And truth number two is new evidence creates a new identity. You do not have to convince yourself that you are a different person through words alone. You can begin proving it one decision at a time, one promise at a time, and one recovery at a time. And as you begin to understand these two truths, you may start to realize something. The old identity was not formed in a moment, it was reinforced through repetition. And guess what? The new identity will be built the same way. The old identity was repeated into existence. The new identity will be proven into existence. Behavior is not identity. There is a major difference between saying, I broke my promise, and saying, I am a person who never follows through. See, the first statement describes an event. The second statement begins programming an identity. One is, this is something that I did, versus the other, this is who I am. And once you begin defining yourself that way, your mind naturally starts filtering for evidence that supports that definition. You miss one workout and say, I'm lazy. You eat one bad meal and say, I have no discipline. You return to one vice and say, I've always been this way, or I will always be this way. But those are not objective facts. They are meanings you have attached to a behavior. Now, reframing does not mean you excuse yourself. It does not mean you pretend the decision was acceptable. It simply means you take responsibility without turning one mistake into a life sentence. You can say, I broke the promise. I need to understand why. I need to change my approach. And I need to still keep the next one. Behavior gives you something to correct. Identity can make you believe there is nothing you can change. And it's very important you distinguish both. So, new evidence creates a new identity. So, how do you building that new identity? You create the evidence, not by claiming to be disciplined while continuing to break your word, not by repeating the same things that your mind does not yet believe. You create evidence through behavior, new behavior. You keep one promise, you take one action, you get back after falling short, you do the workout, you take the walk, you prepare the next meal, you delete the app, you close the app, you stop scrolling, you make that call that you've been avoiding, you finally start that podcast, create that video, open up the Bible, read that book. Whatever it is for you, you handle what you have been avoiding. And now your mind has something new to work with. Instead of saying, I always disappear, you can say, I'm back. Instead of saying, I cannot trust myself, you can say, I kept my word today. Instead of saying, I always ruin everything or I always fall short, right? You say, I made a corrected decision and I can make the next conscious choice. And as you begin to stack those moments, something shifts inside of you. The internal dialogue changes because the evidence changes. Self trust begins growing because your actions become more believable. And eventually, the old story begins losing credibility. Your new identity begins every time your behavior proves the old story wrong. And that brings me to the next slide. The old identity versus the unshakable identity. Let's look at the contrast. The old identity said, I always disappear. I cannot trust myself. I always ruin everything. I need to feel motivated before doing it. The unshakable identity says, I know how to return. I can trust myself to take the next right action. One mistake is just data, it's not my destiny. And my principles are what make the decision. And notice what changed. The unshakable person is not pretending that they never struggle. They're not claiming that they never feel tired, tempted, discouraged, rejected, or afraid. They simply no longer give those feelings power to decide who they become next. They know how to bounce back. And every time they do, they collect more evidence. So the goal is not to create a personality that appears to be strong because eventually you're going to fall. The goal is to become the man who has the proof that he can lead himself when things get tough. So now you understand the problem, you understand the loop, and you understand that behavior does not equal identity. And you can understand that new evidence creates a new identity. And now I want to give you a practical tool. I call it the Unshakable Reset. This is not a system for becoming perfect. It is a system for returning faster. Because the real problem was never that you fell. The real problem was that one fall became permission to disappear. The Unshakable Reset helps you interrupt that before one bad decision becomes another bad day, bad week, bad month, and another year of living below your standards. Okay? The Unshakable Reset has 5 steps. Step number 1 is recognize. You have to see the pattern. Step number 2, reframe. You have to separate the behavior from your identity. The third step, reduce. You choose the smallest meaningful promise. Fourth step, respond. You act by principle on the next decision. And step number 5 is you record and reinforce. You capture the recovery and strengthen the new identity. You do not need to memorize every word right now. I want you to understand the movement. You become aware. You change the meaning. You choose a manageable action. You act. Then you capture what that action proves. You do not become unshakable by never failing. You become unshakable by learning how to return. Let's talk about recognizing the pattern. The first step to change. Awareness interrupts autopilot. Most people do not consciously decide to sabotage themselves. They react automatically. Think about it. Something happens, you get stressed, you feel rejected. You've had a long day. How many guys know exactly what I'm talking about here? You miss that one workout. You eat that one bad meal. And before you know it, you are scrolling, overeating, drinking, smoking, returning to a vice, or completely disappearing from your standards. So pause. Ask yourself, what promise did I break? What triggered it? What am I telling myself now? What emotion or urge am I experiencing? What am I trying to avoid? Maybe you're not actually lazy. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you are not unmotivated. Maybe you're disappointed, ashamed, tired, lonely, or frustrated. The goal is not to judge yourself. The goal is to see what is happening clearly. Once you can observe the pattern, you are no longer completely trapped inside of it. You cannot change a pattern you are still running from unconsciously. So reframe. Let's reframe the meaning. Once you recognize the pattern, reframe it because the event itself is only one part of the problem. The meaning you attach to it determine what happens next. You miss one workout and say, I'm lazy. You eat one bad meal and say, I have no discipline. You return to one vice and say, I always mess it up, or this is just who I am. But those statements are interpretations. Those statements are interpretations. A more accurate statement would be, I broke a promise. Simple, honest. The truth will set you free. That gives you something to correct. Reframing does not mean making excuses. It does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means asking useful questions. What happened? What can I learn? What needs to change? What would be a more accurate interpretation? Maybe it's not the meaning I'm weak. Maybe it is I was unprepared. Maybe it's not I cannot change. Maybe it is I need a smaller standard and a better recovery plan. Take responsibility without turning one mistake into a life sentence. Reduce the next promise. After people fall short, they often make the same mistake. They respond with another massive emotional promise. Tomorrow, I'm changing everything. I'm waking up at 5. I'm going to the gym. I'm working out. I'm training every day. I'm never going to do this again. How many times have you heard that time and time again? But when you're already disappointed in yourself, an oversized promise creates another opportunity to break your word. It's not realistic. So reduce the next promise, not because you're lowering your standards permanently, but because you're choosing an action you can actually complete right now. And that's the most important thing. Maybe you cannot do the full workout, but you could go outside and walk for 15 minutes. You could do push ups, sit ups, squats, whatever it is. Maybe you do not have the energy for a full morning routine, but you can stop and journal for 5 minutes. You can read one passage of scripture. You could do whatever it is that needs to get done, right? Maybe your nutrition fell apart earlier. Prepare the next healthy meal. Maybe you have been avoiding your work. Complete one important task before the day ends. The purpose is not to win the entire day. The purpose is to stop the pattern from becoming complete self abandonment. Reduce the standard when necessary, but never, and I repeat, never reduce it to zero. Respond by principle. Once you choose the smallest meaningful promise, respond by principle. This is key, guys. This is where the reset becomes real. Because awareness without action changes nothing. And for those of you that are fellow Christians, you know that faith without works is dead. You may still feel tired. You may still feel ashamed. You may still feel discouraged, tempted, frustrated, or uncertain. Guess what? That is okay. That is completely normal. You do not need the emotion to disappear before you move. What you do need is to stop giving the emotion the final authority. Ask yourself, what would the person I'm becoming do next? Not what feels easiest, not what gives me the fastest relief, not what the old version of me normally would do. What would the person I am becoming do next? Maybe he gets up and goes for a walk. Maybe he closes the app. Maybe he learns how to say no. Maybe he just does the push ups, prepares the next meal. Maybe he apologizes. Maybe he makes that call. He opens up the Bible, that book, unfinished project. Maybe he completes the task he's been avoiding. Don't wait until Monday. Don't wait until tomorrow. And don't wait until motivation returns. Respond immediately on that next decision. Because here's the truth, emotions can be very loud, but principle is what makes the decision. Now let's talk about record and reinforcing. Once you respond by principle and keep the next promise, do not just move on like it did not matter. You have to record the recovery. This is another key right here. Most people remember every failure, but barely acknowledge the moment when they returned. And if all you remember was where you felt short, the old identity is gonna keep coming back. So record what happened, record what you changed, and record which promise you kept. And then ask yourself, what does this recovery prove about me? Maybe it proves I adjusted, I returned, I did not disappear. I can trust myself to recover. Guys, this is not ego. This is evidence. If the old story says, I always quit, then every recovery becomes evidence against that. Does that make sense? If the old story says, I cannot trust myself, then every promise you keep becomes proof that you're rebuilding that trust. One recovery creates the evidence. Repeated evidence creates identity. Let me show you what this looks like in real life, guys. This event is the same in both examples. You plan to work out after a stressful day and you missed a session. In the old pattern, you did not only miss the workout, you attached a meaning to it. I always fall off. I have no discipline. I knew I would do this again. That creates frustration and disappointment. And guess what? You already know. You order junk food, you scroll at night, you go to bed late and skip tomorrow too. One missed workout becomes a complete collapse. Now, run the Unshakable Reset. Recognize stress triggered the pattern. Step number 2, you reframe it. I missed one workout. One miss does not make me a quitter. Reduce. I will take a 15-minute walk and do push ups. Respond. Complete it before the day ends. You must complete it before the day ends. And you reinforce. I did not disappear. You prove it to yourself. The return to the full plan. The event was the same. The identity you reinforced was different. The win is not perfection. The win is stopping one bad decision from becoming a complete collapse. So, here's a 7-day credibility challenge for you guys. I want to give you a simple way to put this into practice. For the next 7 days, choose 3 promises. I'm not asking you to keep 100 promises here. 3 simple promises. 1 spiritual promise, 1 physical promise, and an income producing promise. Again, this isn't 10 habits. This is not a complete 360 life overhaul. Guys, 3 clear actions that help you rebuild credibility across the areas that matter most: your faith, your body, and your future. The goal is not to become perfect in these next 7 days. The goal is to collect 7 days worth of evidence that, guess what? Your word means something. Your word means something. So choose those 3 promises. Keep each promise simple and measurable. Your spiritual promise could be reading the scripture for 10 minutes, praying before checking your phone, or journaling and reflecting. Your physical promise could be completing your workout, walking 10,000 steps, or hitting your macros. Very important you hit the macros, right? Your income producing promise could be prospecting, following up, creating content, and making an offer. Do not write down, get closer to God, get in shape, make more money. Guys, those are outcomes. You have to choose the actions that are going to produce those outcomes. You follow? At the end of the day, you should be able to answer clearly. Did I keep the promise? Binary. Yes or no. Choose actions that you could control, not outcomes that you hope for. Okay? Now, the bad day rule. During these next 7 days, we all know life is going to happen. You may sleep badly. You may travel. You may, get caught up in the day-to-day life stress with work, with the job, with your business. You may not be able to complete the full version of the promise. That does not mean that the day is lost. Use the bad day rule. Reduce the promise. Keep this standard alive. Recover on the next decision. For example, 10 minutes of scripture may become 2 focused minutes of prayer. A full workout may just become push ups, a walk, sit ups, lunges. 20 calls may become 5 focused follow ups. The smaller version is not the permanent standard, it's the recovery standard. Does that make sense? Its job is to protect the relationship that you are building with yourself. The old identity says, if I cannot do it perfectly, I'll do nothing. Wrong. The unshakable identity says, I will adjust, but I will not disappear. Now, guys, here's the reality. Everything I just taught you can help you. You now understand the pattern, you understand how to interrupt it, and you understand how to keep the next promise. But information only creates awareness. Actually living this when life gets difficult is a completely different thing. That's when you really step into the arena because Monday comes, work gets stressful, you get discouraged, something happens in your relationship, you miss a workout, and you fall back into an old habit. And when you are inside of that pattern, that is exactly when it is hardest to see that pattern clearly. That is why change is very hard alone. The enemy will always want to keep you isolated. So I want to make this stupid simple for you guys. Number one, change your environment. Get around other men who are also committed to becoming better. Men who are working on their faith, their relationship with God, their body, their discipline, their habits, their future. Second thing, accountability. You already know what you have to do, and we already discussed this, but who's really holding you accountable? Who's the person that's calling you out, showing you your blind spots, right? Have people around you who notice when you disappear. People who expect you to follow through on the standard that you said you wanted for yourself, okay? And number three is having the right guidance and support because sometimes you need somebody outside of your own emotions to say, brother, here's what I'm doing. Here's the pattern. Let's get you back on track, which, like I mentioned, has to do with those blind spots. The right environment makes everything easier. And that is exactly why I created Become Unshakable. Become Unshakable is a community and a group coaching environment for men who are serious about becoming better. This isn't about perfection, performance. This is about becoming better and becoming the best version of you. Men who are ready to become somebody they truly admire and respect, who want to deepen their relationship with God, develop real discipline, live life on purpose with purpose, build a physique they're proud of, build real confidence, eliminate the habits that keep holding them back, and become the kind of man who begins attracting better opportunities because he's finally showing up differently for himself. And I want you to be clear on something. This is just not another course. I do not want you buying a bunch of videos and then never opening them again. I've done that in the past and I've had bad experiences. And I know you probably have wasted a lot of money on things that didn't work, like myself. Guys, this is totally different. This is an environment, this is an atmosphere. You're going to get coaching. You're going to get accountability. You're going to get support from me and the people around you. And you're going to be around other men who are raising your standards too. Because the goal is not to feel motivated for a week. The goal is to become somebody different through the evidence that we're collecting over time. Somebody you trust, somebody you respect, and somebody whose word actually means something. And when that when that starts to become your normal and you begin moving through life differently, you'll notice everything change. So I want you to imagine this for a second. Imagine what your life begins to look like when you stop disappearing on yourself, when you stop constantly having to start over, when keeping your word starts becoming your normal. This is the unshakable version of yourself. You keeping your word, taking responsibility, building that physique you're proud of, having more energy, clarity, and confidence. You'll learn how to interrupt those destructive patterns instead of automatically returning to those same old vices. You'll live with more purpose and direction. You'll act on the difficult decisions instead of avoiding them. You will grow closer to God and you will trust and respect yourself because now you have the evidence. And as you become more disciplined, more intentional, and more consistent, you begin to create better opportunities in your life and in your income because you're showing up like a different man. And that is what becoming unshakable means to me. It does not mean nothing ever hurts you. It does not mean that life suddenly becomes easy. It does not mean that you never struggle again. It means that when life hits you, you know how to return. You know how to return to God. You know how to return to your principles. You know how to return to your standards. And you keep the next promise. You do not just look different, you move through life differently. So, my question to you is, are you ready to become unshakable? If this masterclass felt like it was speaking directly to you, and you're tired of having to start all over and want to be around other like minded individuals so you don't have to do this alone and follow through this time, I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm going to drop a link right below this video so you can book a one on one call with me and apply to join Become Unshakable. We'll talk about where you are, we'll talk about what you're struggling with, we'll talk about where you want to go and whether this community is the right environment to help you get there. That's it. But whether you join us or not, I want you to remember why you clicked on this video in the first place. You came here because somewhere inside of you, you were capable of more. So do not finish this masterclass and make another emotional promise about everything you're going to change tomorrow. Don't tell yourself the next day. Don't tell yourself Monday. Don't tell yourself next month. Don't wait for another burst of motivation. Choose one promise. Keep it. Create one new piece of evidence. Then do it again. Because every promise you keep is a vote for the man that you're becoming. And every time you return instead of disappearing, you weaken the old identity. Every time you choose principle over impulse, you strengthen the new one. And every time you do what you said you were going to do, you rebuild credibility with yourself. And eventually, brother, you stop having to convince yourself that you are disciplined. You stop having to convince the people around you that you're on the path. You stop having to tell yourself that you are changing. Your life starts to prove it. Your body proves it. Your habits prove it. Your relationship with God proves it. The way you handle pressure proves it. The way you move and make decisions proves it. And most importantly, the man looking back at you in the mirror knows the truth that you came through. So choose the next step, keep the promise, and become a man whose word means something. God bless you, brother. Thank you for spending the last 45 minutes here with me, and I look forward to seeing you inside.